Being a good GM requires consistency, endless preparation, and player appreciation. This is Confessions of a Frustrated Game Master. Hello, welcome to Confessions of a Frustrated Game Master. I am Robert, the narrator, and thank you for joining me for another episode of Confessions. Well, I'll talk again in this episode about my Vampire Nations campaign that I'm running using Monte Cook's Cypher system. I have a couple of other episodes if you go back and take a look at them, but yeah, I'm going to talk about the last two sessions in my campaign. When we last left our Vampire Freedom Fighters in my Vampire Nations campaign, they had just completed a race that they wanted to win so that a dying Sphinx could decode a tome that the player characters believe could lead them to the MacGuffin that is the goal of the entire campaign. And at the end of the race, they killed one of the other NPCs who actually won the race, not knowing that the Sphinx was magically observing the finish line. So when they exited the structure, the Jade Colossus, in which the race took place, they were advised, hey, guys, as we told you, there are no rules to the race except for the fact that it is a race and that you have to cross the finish line. So you actually killed the winner of the race, so now no one can get the information. But the Arcanists, who the party originally hired to decode the tome, who brought it to the dying Sphinx because he could not get the job done. This Arcanist, his name is Bollinger, and I kind of modeled him off of Samuel L. Jackson. This Arcanist is an illusionist, and he looks very much like Samuel L. Jackson. He has he actually looks like Nick Fury from the Avengers. He has an eye patch, and he is missing one arm, which the player characters haven't asked him about why he is missing an arm, but he is the go-between between the Sphinx and the player characters. And he told the characters, okay, well, this kind of didn't go the way you planned it. Let me go back to the Sphinx and see if I can do anything about it. And the characters wanted to speak to the Sphinx, and he said, no, that's not allowed. So he goes to speak to the Sphinx about what has occurred, and one of the player characters decide to follow Bollinger back to the Sphinx's lair. And in this pursuit, or this encounter, shadowing encounter, I decided to use rules that I like to use during my games. And what I have the players do, I talked about this in one of my previous metagaming videos, is at the beginning of a campaign, I'll ask the players, if the system allows, to give me 10 roles. And what these roles are used for is so that I never have to ask the players to give me perception rolls. Because of course, if you ask a player to give you a perception roll, they know there's something perceived, so on and so forth. So I ask for 10 perception rolls, and whenever there is something that the PCs may want to perceive, I'll go down the list and check their rolls off one at a time. When I get to the bottom of the list of 10 rolls, I'll start back up at the top. So the players I never ask my players for perception rolls. But something else I also do, and this kind of pertains to the shadowing that one of my player characters were attempting to do, is I find those useful for stealth rolls as well, because usually when you're shadowing someone or you're trying to ambush someone, you don't usually know how good of a job you're doing until it's too late. So what I do is the Cypher system also allows me to use those exact same roles for stealth roles. So I also mark that off. But the PC was better at doing stealth than better at perception than he was at stealth, because he wasn't seen by Bollinger. However, later on, when he got outside of the Sphinx's lair, he was seen by guards outside of the lair. And I just told the PC that you're observing Bollinger enter this cavern or cave, and all of a sudden you feel sharp metal pressed against your neck, and someone is holding a spear against the back of your neck out of nowhere. And then you try to look behind you to see who this individual is, and then there's another spear at your throat. So the two guards have found you, and Bollinger comes back out and says, "Hey, why did you follow me? Please go back home," and so on and so forth. So long story short, Bollinger revisits the PCs and lets them know that the Sphinx has two other tasks that he would like you to accomplish. And the first task is to go back into the Jade Colossus and retrieve the body of one of the twin brothers who was a participant in the race, who had fallen into a dark shaft where no one knew where it led. And he presumably perished, but they don't know. And he perished because one of the PCs in the group cut the wire or the ropes, allowing individuals to safely swing across this dark shaft. And the NPC, this twin brother, grabbed it, plummeted to a unknown fate. And the Sphinx, for some reason, wanted to recover the body, or at least the head, quite gruesomely, of this one of the racers who disappeared. So they agreed to do that, and if they completed this task, the Sphinx would tell the players what the other task would be. So the players did so. They went back into the Jade Colossus. They used a rope to descend down this ramp that they had. At the end of this ramp, they had to leap off and grab the ropes, and then they descended into the shaft, and in this shaft descended into a finished room, and it was occupied by what could only be described as a floating gelatinous cube. And it was gelatinous, but not in the shape of a cube. It floated off of the ground. It was kind of shaped like a teardrop. And what is the name of this creature? I'm going to find out what the name of this creature is in the Cypher system. I'm going to pull that up really quickly. And it could also fire bolts of its gelatinous form at players, and it also could, of course, ingest the players or pull them into its gelatinous form. It's called a Devilant, is what it's called, and I have a picture of it here. I don't know if you can see that here, but that's what it looks like. Quite disturbing looking creature. You can see that there's something floating inside the creature. So the creature attacks. The players find a partially digested individual inside of the gelatinous creature, and one of the player characters, Malak, who actually can transform into a werewolf, is one step away from dying, and then one of the other PCs strike the killing blow to the Devilant, destroying it, and saving his life one step from death. It was really dramatic, really cinematic. They recover the skull and take it to the Sphinx, and what they discover is the reason that the Sphinx wanted to recover this NPC's body is because in the head, the NPC was given a magical item that is embedded in the skull, harmlessly embedded in the skull using magic. And what it does was it recorded the NPC's memories. And apparently this dying Sphinx, who has not been able to really move around much as it has become ill, wanted to experience the NPC running this race. So he wanted to have that experience and wanted to retrieve the stone to retrieve those memories, and that's the reason he wanted to retrieve the body of the NPC. And so they decided to, during the conversation, one of the PCs in the group, Calvarian, tried to be a little tricky with the Sphinx himself and said, well, actually, you didn't say that we had to give you the skull. The Sphinx kind of smiled at that, and Bollinger, the Arcanist, who was the contact person in the middle, profusely apologized to the Sphinx and was a little put off by Calvarian, the PC Calvarian, trying to be a little tricky in his own right. But cooler heads prevailed. The head was given over to the Sphinx. The Sphinx retrieved the memories and told the PCs that the second task in order to get the tome translated was he wanted one of them to carry one of these magical items and record the memory of them flying on flying on a griffin. And the Arcanist Bollinger let the players know that the elite guards of the God King of the humans who now occupy this continent do visit the city periodically once a month, and their visit, conveniently enough, is coming up. So it would be a great opportunity for them to fulfill this wish. The Sphinx wants them to fly the griffin high up into the sky, into the clouds, and back down. So he is going to leave it to them to figure out how to do this. And the player characters, 2 of the 3 player characters in the game, decide to take these artifacts into their bodies to record their memories, to kind of double up the opportunities for them to complete the task. And they leave the Sphinx's lair. And what I have Bollinger. I determined that Bollinger is a little bit upset because, first of all, one of the PCs followed him back against his wishes to his dying friend's lair. Excuse me. And second of all, he is upset because during the conversation with the Sphinx, one of the player characters tried to get the upper hand on this dying Sphinx, and he's really not too happy about that. So what I have Bollinger, the Arcanist, do is I have him yell at Calvarian, one of the other NPCs, and he says, you're trying to screw this up. I don't like it, and I want you to stay away from the Sphinx. And he says to the other PCs, you two seem to be rational, so I'll work with you. But if you come back here, and he uses some expletives, and he says, if you come back here, I told them to kill you on sight, Calvarian, because you don't have any respect for my friend. He's dying, so I don't really want you to deal with him directly. He's upset. He's used some expletives. Calvarian continues to move off, and the other two PCs in the group try to calm Pollinger down, telling him to talk to him respectfully. And he says, "I'm sorry if I hurt your feelings, but I feel like he's disrespecting my friend's wishes. My friend, the Sphinx, is dying, and he is disrespecting him, and I'm not going to allow him to do that." So there's a little bit of friction there. Things are smoothed over, and the players go to observe the 3-story tower that is visited by the elite Griffin riders of the God King. Cephius is his name, of the humans, and they go there to observe the area where where the Griffins visit, and the Griffin riders land and try to come up with a plan. There's a little bit of friction because one of the player characters want to do this kind of covertly, maybe trying to socialize with the Griffin riders and just outright asking, and Calvarian wants to kind of sneak in and maybe steal one of the Griffins, and there's a little bit of an argument between which one they should do. So they decide to, I guess, to use both tacks, and one of the Ketterick decides to go to a local bar that the Griffin riders visit when they visit the town, have a round of drinks for everyone, become really friendly, and when the Griffin riders come in to make a big show of respect and show that he is awed by their position and awed by them as the elite riders of the God King, and it actually works. He woos one of the Griffin riders and actually convinces him to take him back to the tower to perhaps ride one of the Griffins with him, with the Griffin rider. And on the way back to the tower, the other two PCs are kind of outside of the tower, and I let them know that they sense another vampire inside the tower. And it turns out to be the third Griffin rider is a vampire. And of course, if you have listened to my other videos about my Vampire Nation campaign, the humans came to this continent that was ruled by vampires, started to defeat the vampires, and the vampires had to travel to a pocket dimension, and the only reason they come back in small parties as the flow of magic allows is to try to find this MacGuffin that will defeat the humans. So they know that some vampires were left here and now dwell in underground layers, but they are coming across a vampire who is a Griffin rider for the God King of the humans, and they find this woman in the tower. They come across her, and that's where the session ends. So I wanted to have a little bit of tension there. My intention was to always have one of the Griffin riders be a vampire, and I assumed that the guys were going to do it covertly, so as they're sneaking into the tower to try to grab a Griffin to fly off and maybe hijack a Griffin, that they would get this sense and they would be torn. Oh my God, do we complete the mission or do we investigate sensing another vampire inside the tower? And it so happens that one of the PCs was already in the tower because he had befriended one of the Griffin riders, and one of the PCs was outside of the tower climbing on the outside. So they were able to figure out who this was that was giving them this sense that another of their kind was near. And that's where we ended. It's a very solid session. Some parts of it were a little weird. We had to end a little bit early, but I enjoyed it for the most part, and I really had a good time. So thanks for checking out this episode of Confessions of a Frustrated Game Master. And yeah, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever and whenever you are. Thanks a lot.